So I know that the Denver Nuggets are coming off of a loss to the Houston Rockets and they're without Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. But at the same time, I just feel like this team is being completely underdiscussed when we're having these conversations about the NBA championship contender landscape. To be honest, I'm not surprised that this team continues to fly under the radar because Nikola Jokic has found himself in the Giannis Antetokounmpo conversation as far as like normalizing video game stats to the point that people are just completely unimpressed by what he's able to do on a night-to-night basis now. It's like the stat line doesn't speak volumes enough for what he's been able to do on this season because it feels like he kind of moonwalks himself into a triple double on a night to night basis. And it's made it where between that and the fact that outside of Nikola Jokic, the star power is not really equally distributed across the Denver Nuggets in ways that some of these other teams are. Like, for example, the Houston Rockets have Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun, Amen Thompson's caught a lot of fire as far as what he brings to the table as a high upside prospect. If you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, right? The Los Angeles Lakers, they have LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves has really caught fire this season and made himself, a premium player in the NBA, a guy who's kind of already established his career as a guy who is going to be a dangerous third option, but has really kind of caught the eye of the national media in a different light this season. The Denver Nuggets have just kind of done things this season the way they've always done them. They've just won off of the back of Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, pick and roll options, good defense on the perimeter, knocked out three-point shooting from a player here or there, and just quietly flow under the radar as like the top three. In this case, they literally are the third team in the Western Conference. And no one really talks about them very much. So I really wanted to talk about them kind of not necessarily like super in depth, but to a certain extent kind of lock in on what the Denver Nuggets have done so far this season. So sitting at 21-7 so far this year, they are first in points per game, first in field goal percentage from the as a team, first in 3-point percentage as a team at 40.3%. And one of the things that stood out to me is they're moving the ball very well, 29.5 assists per game, and they're taking care of the ball very well on the other side of that. 12.5 turnovers is third in the NBA. But it's all the other efficiency things around it. True shooting percentage of the team, first in the NBA, 63%. Effective field goal percentage, 59.2%, first in the NBA. Offensive rating, best in the NBA at 126.2. And although their defense has not necessarily been elite, they have been middle of the pack, which for a team that has been this efficient and this effective offensively is kind of all you need when you also know that you have an otherworldly player in Nikola Jokic at the helm. Another thing that is being a little under discussed given the fact that the All-Star conversation is just so all over the place because no one really knows how to go about building the proper criteria this season because 1,000,001 players are averaging 20 plus points per game. Usually you can position yourself where when a guy averages, 25, 26 points per game, it feels pretty easy to at least insert him in the All-Star conversation, if not kind of lock him in as a guy that feels safe to, have as part of your, 12-man group or, 8-man group. I think it's 8 this year. As far as the whole, I think each team, because it's the East it's the East, the West, and then the International or something of that ilk. But nonetheless, it's one of those things where like the All-Star conversation has gotten weirder and weirder when you pair the injuries across the board this season. Some of the underperforming teams like the LA Clippers are not nearly as good as they should be to really warrant James Harden making the All-Star team, but he's been absolutely amazing and the only real lifeline for this team so far this season, despite how bad they've been. Same thing could be said for the Portland Trailblazers. Like the Portland Trailblazers were very hot earlier in the season, have cooled off a good amount later as things have progressed. But Denny Avdija is, I should be like far and away one of the top candidates for most improved player because he has taken like an all-star caliber leap this season, right? But there's just so much give and take, push and pull as far as what the real standard of being an all-star is, unless you're one of these, all-stars locks that's like a Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, obviously. Jalen Brunson feels like a lock. Jalen Brown feels like a lock, right? Like some of these guys you can list off that just feel like comfortable locks, but once you start getting past the first, let's say, 8 to 10 guys, the conversation gets very, very murky. One guy that I think needs to firmly be in that conversation this season. He feels like he always is, but this might be the first year where there's some real validity to his chances of being not just making the All-Star team, but legitimately being like a well placed well placed on the roster, right? Not just simply, an injury replacement or something of that nature. And that's Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, 24.9 points, 6.6 assists, 4.3 rebounds, shooting nearly 50% from the field, and shooting nearly 46% from three, along with 88.5% from the free throw line, just around 64% true shooting, as well as 1.1 steals and taking care of the ball, 2.2 turnovers per game. Jamal Murray's shooting has always been something that's been an effective element of making this Denver Nuggets team the best that they possibly can be. But I feel like this year he's been activated in a mode where you can see that the last few seasons where his health was such a question mark, especially last year in particular, it felt like the injury coming into the season, right? Even if you date back to when he was with Team Canada, like he looked like a shell of himself. And it kind of extended even further on into the regular season for the Denver Nuggets, where it felt like he never really got all the way right last year. He had spurts, he had, moments here and there, and that's a natural thing for Jamal Murray, but there was no real consistency that made you feel like, okay, Jamal Murray is back to that all-star caliber player that he's been, back when the Nuggets made their NBA championship run. And this season, he feels like he's starting to rekindle that in a real way. And I think he's going to be somebody that is very deserving of at least an all-star consideration, if not like a full-blown all-star nod. He would be one of my first players on the list of all-star snub if he is not to make it. Another player who I think is, quietly really done good for them this season is somebody who started out the season not so great, and that's Cam Johnson. Cameron Johnson is somebody that, with the trade with trading Michael Porter Jr. and seeing what Michael Porter Jr. has been able to do with a higher usage for the Brooklyn Nets and more of an offensive focus that's centered around him getting, his shots up. A lot of people probably pointed to the beginning of the season looking at the Michael Porter Jr. Cameron Johnson trade as a win for the Brooklyn Nets and a loss for the Denver Nuggets, despite the fact that the idea around Cam Johnson, of course, first went beyond just the on-the-court fit, because there was also a financial aspect that was included in why Michael Porter Jr. needed to be moved in the first place. But also, Cam Johnson started out the year shooting about 31 to 32% from beyond the arc. He was being very timid about his three-point volume. And there was even a podcast with Aaron Gordon where I think they were on the Young Man and the Three, and he was kind of sitting there talking with Cam, and he's like, "You're a good player. We're a good team. Be yourself, and we're gonna get clicking, and we're gonna be the most dangerous team in the Western Conference. We are gonna be the team that's there in the end if we all play within ourselves." And although Aaron Gordon hasn't been on the floor due to the injury and stuff like that, Cam Johnson has come into his own slowly but surely at the back half of this early start to the season, where he's starting to see the ball go through the hoop and the confidence is clearly starting to reestablish himself. 11.8 points per game, 2.3 assists, 3.6 rebounds, 46% from the field, but most importantly, 42.3% from beyond the arc. And I think that the importance of that is that's the reason you bring in Cam Johnson. More than anything else, that's the thing that was supposed to be the equalizer, besides just obviously the health concerns that come with Michael Porter Jr., because one of the biggest things that made him such a tricky player last postseason was that although he is a good high upside player and a knockdown three-point shooter very similar to Cam Johnson, that lower back injury really hindered him in a way that took him out of his mode last postseason. And Cam Johnson, does not have nearly the same injury track record, and probably is a better fit as an off-ball moving shot creator, somebody who you can get the ball to off the catch, off the dribble even, but more so off the catch and running off screens and different things like that. That just is more effective when you have a lead passer like Nikola Jokic at the helm. Most importantly, Cam is still at a mid-tier volume at 4.5 3-point attempts per game, and these numbers are actually updated a little bit more, where he's actually shooting on the season 39.3% from three, which is still around his career average, by the way, which is 39.2. 4.5 3-point attempts per game, I think, is due to go up very soon. But I think the mere fact that he was able to regain his rhythm after starting off the year where he was shooting at one point like nearly sub 30% to kick off the year, his reemergence or reestablishment of being that knockdown 3-point shooter that he's been for the Brooklyn Nets and prior on that team that made the Western Conference Finals and even the NBA Finals for Phoenix, him being that version of himself is going to be an important factor for the Denver Nuggets team once we start talking about the playoffs. I don't really need to go too in depth about what Nikola Jokic is doing so far this season, because reading off his box score feels like a joke, obviously, right? And again, I don't want to underplay that. I mentioned at the top of the podcast that I feel like Nikola Jokic he's entered a tier of NBA conversations where what he does is so ridiculously insane, so video game like that it's very hard to extrapolate or interpret anything really as a true takeaway away. But besides, that dude's an MVP candidate as long as he's healthy. And he's never really dealt with any true injury concerns. Knock on wood for Denver Nuggets fans that doesn't become something they have to worry about. And this is a team that when they won the championship that year, I remember having a conversation on a different podcast with one of my co-host friends they won the championship, and I remember asking him the question, like, was this team the best team in the regular season, one of the better teams, if not most dominant teams, when it came to the postseason that year? And because they were the best, and because the media specifically was always pushing for a team to be considered more dangerous or better than them. I remember the Lakers, Minnesota, even Phoenix, right? All these other teams, because of the star power they had, were in the conversation to be over the Denver Nuggets, despite the fact that the year they won the championship, they had the best starting five statistically in the NBA. They were front to back the best team in the NBA as far as, wins loss record and things like that, as far as being just consistently dominant throughout the year. And the question was just like, I posed the question like, were they just the best team all season long and no one wanted to acknowledge it? Because the Denver Nuggets are not this flashy team. They're not this team that does it in a way that's going to, really be eye-catching as far as the ESPN top 10, plays of the night, unless you're just a very big fan of, Nikola Jokic's flashy passes and things of that nature. But they get the job done, and they get it done effectively. Very similar to like when we talked about the San Antonio Spurs a long time ago with Tim Duncan as like this, faceless superstar, doesn't talk very much, very effective, plays at an all-star MVP caliber level, has really solid players around them, and they're going to win 50-plus games every single season, be in the mix to win the Western Conference title, and make a way for the NBA championship, where they're going to be in the mix to possibly win the whole dang thing, right? I do think that the Denver Nuggets, when you talk about teams in the West that could usurp the Oklahoma City Thunder, the first team a lot of people are going to point to is probably the Houston Rockets, just given the fact that Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., like the athleticism paired with the size that they have, causes real problems that at least can equalize things with the kind of depth and talent the Oklahoma City Thunder have. But I think the discipline and continuity paired with the MVP caliber play of Nikola Jokic, the all-star caliber play of Jamal Murray, the upside play of guys like Aaron Gordon, Tim Hardaway Jr., Bruce Brown as an upside player, Christian Brown as an upside player, Cam Johnson. This team has the makeup paired with the continuity of a team that could be a very, very dangerous threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder because they just know how to win games, right? And I think that's the overall premise of what I'm saying in this, and what I'm trying to say is that I believe that the Denver Nuggets are going to remain as one of the most underdiscussed NBA contenders of the NBA season. Just don't be surprised if they're the team that plays the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. Like that's where I'm at right now. I think with the Oklahoma City Thunder versus Denver Nuggets debate is that I think that the Denver Nuggets are in my personal opinion the closest proximity as far as talent's concerned to win a 7-game series to beating the Oklahoma City Thunder. I genuinely believe that. I think that the Denver Nuggets are that kind of team, and I would not be surprised if they're the team that plays the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. And to take it a step further, I wouldn't be surprised if that series goes 6 or 7 games. Because contrary to what the belief of the of teams or people, players, pundits, all that see the Oklahoma City Thunder and see their win-loss record and see what they've got in version of draft capital that maybe even potentially get better at the trade deadline if they want to do so. They get Jalen Williams back, who's still kind of revamping off of missing the first month and some change of the season. They still have to prove it. They won the championship last year, but this is 6 to 7 straight years of not having a repeat champion. Right? So until the Oklahoma City Thunder do it, we have to presume that there's a possibility, there's a true chance that they could get knocked off for one reason or another, because there's been a precedent set that repeating is just as hard as you think it is in today's NBA. And the Denver Nuggets, who I think have quietly rebuilt themselves back into this caliber of team, because it was a little shaky there between when they won the championship and now, because season after season they were losing player after player. They lose Bruce Brown, they lose KCP. Now you have to move off of Michael Porter Jr. They're constantly seeing these pieces fall off from the team that once made them the champions that they were. And you had to wonder, pairing with all the financial responsibilities around Jamal Murray getting his contract extension, Nikola Jokic getting his contract extension, Aaron Gordon being on a lucrative contract, having to re-sign Christian Brown, right? All of these things, you had to wonder whether or not the window was closing around Nikola Jokic as him being the best player on a championship caliber team, when the talent around him, although the price tag would indicate was worth viewing them as a contender, the production on the floor made them feel like, yeah, they would be in the mix in the Western Conference, but teams like the Rockets, teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves were coming in a way that made you worry about whether or not the window was quickly closing on the Nuggets to make another run at winning another championship. And yet, here we are a few seasons later. They're able to competently replace Michael Porter Jr. Do I still think that Michael Porter Jr. is probably the better player between him and Cam Johnson? Probably. But I think that what they were able to get as subsequent value still really has worked in their favor. I think that something that hasn't been discussed enough is also just their center depth in terms of what they've been able to do, because this team has really struggled at the center's position behind Nikola Jokic. It's been one of the things that's really plagued them for the last couple of years, and this is the first time in a while that it feels like they're kind of well put together, where they have depth at every single position. And specifically with having, Jonas Valanciunas, who just provides really solid minutes for them. Bruce Brown, very solid minutes. Christian Brown, when healthy. Peyton Watson, when healthy. They just have real overall depth, I feel like, at every position in a way that they haven't had, even dating back to that championship winning year. So all of this to say that I think that the Denver Nuggets are a sleeping giant. They're no longer a dark horse, because I feel like they're a team that everybody does consider as a perennial playoff contender. It's kind of set in stone that as long as Jokic is healthy, they're going to be a playoff team. But so dark horse is not enough. But I think they're the sleeping giant in the sense that they're the team that everybody knows is capable. See, the difference between a dark horse and a sleeping giant is the dark horse is the team that nobody is necessarily sure could get it done, but has the talent where maybe if things break right, they can do it. The Denver Nuggets are a sleeping giant because they're the team everybody knows about in terms of being a team that could be this dangerous, that could win the championship. The question is everybody going to get privy to the fact that they're truly that dangerous, right? It's not about whether or not a couple of things break right. They're already there. The question isn't whether or not they're good enough. It's whether or not you believe they're good enough. That's why they're the sleeping giant. They're the team sitting right there in your face, biggest day, third in the Western Conference, with an MVP caliber player, with another All-Star on the team, with real depth, standing right there in your face, eyes closed, just waiting for their name to be called. The question is, are you going to acknowledge that the Denver Nuggets are that caliber of team? Or are you going to keep throwing them in the dark horse category where you feel like they need a couple of things to break right to be in that conversation in the Western Conference Finals, in the NBA Finals? Because my personal opinion on it is that this is a team that should be on everybody's radar. This is a team that I think already is on everybody's radar. But when are we going to fully acknowledge that the way they are right now may just already be good enough to not only make it to the Western Conference Finals, but maybe even knock the Oklahoma City Thunder off in the process? That's the scary part about this team, man. You guys let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about it. Am I chatting? Am I talking way too much? Am I overhyping the Denver Nuggets, or is there some validity there? Interested to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section down below. But next time, peace.